Thanks very much, Will, for joining me and everyone else for joining the session today as well. Content is king. We said that it's the topic of the talk today. But why is sharing content so important? And do you think the less is more rule applies, or should we actually share more?
I think it's a good question, especially within the sort of last 12 months, the situation that we've all found ourselves in. I think there was a lot of clamber when you say less is more. There was a lot of COVID-19 noise, I suppose. There was a lot of information coming out. Some of it seemed like it was just information for information's sake at the end of it. So I think less is more in that instance. The good content cut through the noise, cut through just the generic stuff that was being sent out. A lot of our law firm clients, we encourage them to produce content that showcased, I suppose it sounds terrible from a lawyer's perspective, but showcased empathy. It showcased, let the suit come away. You've got, as you say, you apologize for your background. I think it's great. It's very authentic. You've got kids, you've got a kid's kitchen in the background. I think lawyers that could do that as well, they came out of it quite well. They actually, okay, you're in my room. I'm a normal person as well. I'm not just someone that's giving you this expensive expert legal advice. If they could give them, the expert legal advice coupled with a bit of personality, we're all going through this together. I think clients really like that.
I think the issue, I completely agree with you, but I think the issue, and maybe some others on this call will face the same challenges. I think the issue for us, like as BD and marketing professionals, trying to sort of like sell that angle, which I think is great. I think that's the way to go. But then sort of like the pushback that I get is, yeah, but it's unprofessional. Whereas it doesn't necessarily have to be unprofessional, right? I mean, it's still about, they're still the experts, regardless of their backgrounds, as you said, or, the way they're dressed. But I think it's still a hard thing to get over. And maybe also it differs per jurisdiction. I see here in the Middle East, there's still this perception of if you wear a suit, you're a professional. If you don't wear a suit, like you're, just spending your free time, or you're not working, for example. So how would we convince our lawyers to sort of like still say the content that you need to share doesn't have to be like always very sort of like with a legal angle or focused on legal issues, rather than, you can share something else, but it doesn't mean that that is unprofessional.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a few things there. It comes into, lawyers don't like to fail, do they? Or as you say, be seen to be unprofessional. I think if they're adding value, I think a lot of lawyers have changed their behavior in terms of how they think commercially, maybe in these times. So I think, and also there's this billable hour type thing, which you well know about, Barbara, that they always think they have to charge for something. Actually, if they think about it from, okay, client A, client B, they're my top two clients. How am I going to add value to them with content? How am I going to showcase my expertise? How am I going to nurture them along? How am I going to, be the lawyer that they will always go to? I think that's how they have to think of it. So this is behavioral change where they have to, don't just produce content for content's sake. There needs to be a reason behind it. What are they trying to impart from a knowledge perspective onto their key clients that helps them? A lot of clients had issues during COVID-19, during the last year, with law changes, with many things that took place. A good lawyer will be able to take that and then turn it into information that really helps, that he or she's key clients, I would say.
Yeah, I think, completely agree with you. So if we talk about content sharing, then what does good content look like? Can you tell us, what should we be sharing? The $1 million question for today.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing I would, in answer to that, I would get everyone to think about. We speak to lots of law firms, okay, and they've spent a lot of time and money and effort on producing things like knowledge vaults, on big hero pieces of content that have cost a lot of money, a lot of time, and been quite tricky to produce. Time and time again, we're told that no one really ever sees them. They don't see the light of day because they're stuck behind a gated area on the website. No one comes to the law firm's website. You're not retailers, so you don't get millions of people coming. So I suppose the sharing part's so important, because it's sort of push marketing. You need to get these pieces out there. You need to push them out to the right people. Otherwise, they just sit there and no one actually reads them. So what does good content look like? You know, again, it needs to be timely. It needs to be relevant. We haven't really talked about channels yet, but again, a lot of the marketeers and BD folk that we speak to, they always say, look, we just need to get our lawyers using LinkedIn better or using social better. Again, you know, they need to have something to share. Otherwise, they're not going to use it. You know, they need information that's relevant, that's authentic, that's going to show them in a good light. So that lends itself to, if they're producing it themselves, which is another issue, then they'll share it. You know, they're proud of it, so they'll push it out there to the right people. Often, you know, a lawyer, professional service expert will put barriers up. You know, I'm too busy. My clients' work is the most important. So there's always issues with actually them producing content. So again, we're told it's, you know, external ghostwriters that are writing content for fee earners. Yeah, it needs to be authentic, so people can read between the lines. I think now it needs to come from the lawyers, and again, you just need to break down those barriers, which we can come on to. But I think mixing up the formats also works. You're not going to get every fee earner maybe writing stuff. So podcasts, we've seen the rise of the podcast. It's just an audio file. Again, once you break down that barrier, Barbara, you could ask, you know, your fee earners at Altamimi 3 questions around employment law. I'm sure they would answer it very, very happily. And then you've got yourself an audio file that we're recording now on Zoom. It's very easy to do. But ultimately, it's the clients that benefit from that. Events, you know, if all the events sphere has changed, obviously, because we haven't been able to go to physical events, but everyone's been doing webinars, everyone's been doing online events. Always add value at events. You know, not all your clients have been to the same event, so it's always getting the lawyers to think about, okay, if I'm speaking at an event, you've got a nice bit of content there to share, and it just needs to be summarized and then pushed out to people that didn't make it. Very, very simple.
Very true. I see a question came in from Jamie, who asked, how do you feel about ghost blogging? You just touched on it, actually, but how do you feel about that? Because we often see, as you said, you know, one of the reasons, or the perception, I think, with fee earners is usually we don't have time, you know, it's just going to be too time intense, whereas maybe in their minds they think about something, you know, big, you know, a big piece of text that they need to put together, something really complex. But you know, I think what you're talking about is keeping it simple, you know, short, brief messages, brief pieces of content. Doesn't have to be overly complicated. But then they usually say, well, we don't have time for it, so find someone to do it for me. So how do you feel about ghost blogging?
What am I allowed to say? I mean, yeah, I mean, we come up against it, not come up against it, but lots of law firms had or sometimes still do it. I think it comes back to this authenticity thing, especially in the last 12 months. I think being authentic is absolutely massive. The lawyers are the experts. You know, people want to hear from them. There's lots of research. I'll bring it up again in a bit as well, but Edelman are a big B2B comms agency, I think one of the biggest in the land. They do quite a bit of research around trust and around actually the expert voice. Who are the trusted advisors? It's the fee earners, it's the lawyers. They're the ones that know the law the best. They're the ones that are normally client facing and know their clients the best. So it makes sense for them to do it instead of, I would say, farming it out to someone that doesn't actually, isn't an expert in that field. I mean, they may be able to.
True. And I think Jamie also raised the point that in the US, apparently it's seen as unethical, which I would totally agree with. You know, if you sort of like think that you're going to get, you know, an expert's view on something, but actually it's not the expert who's talking, but it's someone else who's talking. I mean, you know, we have to query whether that's authentical, one, but also whether that's something that we can, you know, we can or should rely on, whether it's credible.
exactly, and that's another great point. You know, they may be beautifully crafted pieces of content, amazing wordsmiths, but it's not authentic, and it's not a lawyer actually writing it. They may have the final sign off, but you know, it's not actually produced by them. So yeah, one could argue that definitely.
Yes, I think I can agree. We're pretty much against that, I think, is the conclusion.
Strongly against.
Yeah, strongly against. Good. So, and I mean, we've talked about what we should be sharing, right? What sort of like good content looks like, and we want to keep it concise and short and easy to digest, I think. So it doesn't have to be time consuming. Now, obviously, we know that Passle is a fantastic tool to do all of that. So you have good experience and good examples of, you know, that actually works, which I think is fantastic. Now, you may have also seen examples of what sort of like bad content sharing looks like. Can you give us a few, types of content that you've seen where you really thought, well, this ain't going anywhere. This is really bad.
I suppose again, it's this behavioural change. I think we see a lot of lawyers shouting about, you know, wins, for instance. We've won this. Well, actually, does that add any value? I suppose it's a mindset change of
Mm.
vanity. You know, okay, it's good to shout about yourself, but does that win business? I would argue no. Does it add any value to key clients? Probably not either. You know, so I think alongside things like obviously the obvious stuff, or hopefully it's obvious, don't talk about politics, don't give advice on religion, you know, maybe don't talk about clients if it's not public knowledge. All of these types of things are probably a no-no. We also call it lazy sharing sometimes. You know, if you've taken the time to go to an event, then tell people about the event, because not everyone's there. That there's too many bits of content that go up and they take a photo, they take the time to take the photo of the key speaker, but then they don't write anything. I'm here, I'm at this great event. And it's like, well, tell us. We're not there.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. Add some value to us. And I think the similar thing with, you know, you see lots of people just sharing articles. I saw this on the Financial Times, or well, that's a great example because it's gated content anyway. So, or I saw this on the BBC. Well, what does it mean? You know, this is the opportunity for lawyers to be able to add insight and start conversation. You know, I think this would help you because of this. So
Maybe, yeah, add the why, right? Add
yeah,
why this is relevant. Again, I think you touched on that in the beginning, like we need to share content that is relevant, which I think is key. If it's not relevant to anyone, why would you bother sharing it, right? I think Jamie said something that I resonate with that. She said, you know, those win shout outs are unethical in the US. You pointed on, you know, lawyers sharing, oh, I've been ranked by Chambers or Legal 500s. I'm so pleased, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, lawyers, attorneys, wherever they are, they still keep on doing that. But do we consider that to be good content sharing? I mean, is it, you know, it seems to be unethical in the US. I get that, but still doesn't stop people from doing it.
I think it's a big bugbear for marketeers, especially because it takes up so much time as well, and it seems to be such a big, you know, these listings, these I'm the best ranked in Chambers in X, Y, and Z. I mean, really, it's just to showcase to their peers on that side, isn't it? I mean, that someone instructing them would be able to know if they're a good lawyer or not from various bits, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it is a bit of a bugbear. I would definitely argue against it winning and adding any value to any business or prospective business.
Well,
Really.
there's no substance really in that, is there? And I think that's one of the things that we need to consider when sharing content is, you know, again, the why are we sharing it? What is the added value to someone else? Knowing that you've done that or that you're very good at whatever you do.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to, again, why are you sharing it? You know, the content should be written and shared only if it's going to add value to someone, or if it's going to, you know, showcase expertise, if it's going to push a prospect further along the line. The other opportunity as well for lots of law firms is that often this holy grail of cross-pollination of different areas of, different areas of the business. We're a full service law firm. Oh, I didn't know that. We actually only instruct you for employment law. I didn't know that you did real estate, and I didn't know that you did, tax and everything, because they work in silos sometimes. So I think it's a great opportunity to showcase that. If they start sharing bits of content from other parts of the law firm, then that's really powerful. Similarly, if you've got a partner sharing maybe a associate or a junior lawyer's work, it's really quite powerful, actually, because it's again shows that the partner trusts the younger generation coming through, and I think it just looks good from an external perspective as well.
Yeah. So we get another question from Rahul. He's from India, and he just said, how can we persuade junior lawyers to write quality content? Because often it's seen, and this is maybe linking back to, get some junior associates involved as well in what you do. I think generally lawyers need to do that, and especially partners need to do that a lot more in whatever they do, because juniors need to learn, right? And often partners, they have some sort of protection mechanism in place where they want to shield off all their relationships, as well as the content that they're sharing. My name needs to be on there, etc., etc. How do we persuade junior lawyers to write quality content, even though we are aware of the barriers in terms of seniority levels or hierarchy internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's this disconnect between junior lawyers that come out of law school. They could be brilliant technically, but then they're not equipped maybe in the wider world, speaking to clients or showcasing that expertise. So it is an issue. We've seen some of our clients do it in a very clever way. We've had things like trainee diaries. Just get them used to writing what does a day in the life of a junior lawyer look like. They're not going to say anything bad. What it actually helps do is that next intake of junior lawyers coming through, they see this stuff and they think, oh, that's quite cool. X law firm empowers their junior lawyers to talk about what they're doing. This is great. That's one way of doing it. Another way, Rahul, is co-authoring. You could maybe co-author with a senior partner and a junior lawyer, so they're both on it. And it's got both their sort of names attached to it, and both have editing rights. So the senior partner ultimately has sign off, but it can be attributed to both. And that's a sort of quality. It hits that aspect as well because it's quality controlled. But really, junior lawyers they normally don't have huge networks to start with. So what they're going to write, especially on things like LinkedIn, is not going to get to thousands of people because they haven't got those contacts yet. I think it's
a safe environment, you would say.
Yeah, I think it's important to get them to cut their teeth somehow. And I think thought leadership and writing is a good way, as long as you put I think editorial guidelines are a good thing. Again, going back to, don't talk about this, don't talk about this. This is what we're trying to achieve here. And then you give them, they're normally very good at working in that parameter. And you'll normally get some good content as a result, because they want to build their brand. That's the way to do it. They want to build their client base.
Yeah, and I mean, they have to start now, right? If you to build a client base, it doesn't happen overnight. So better get started soon. You just touched on something really interesting. You said something about thought leadership. So it depends on what type of content we're sharing, right? And a lot is currently going on around thought leadership. But what is that really? And what should our lawyers be doing around thought leadership? So if we talk about the type of content that we were sharing, is that thought leadership, and what is it?
Yeah, I think thought leadership again has changed and evolved over time, and it does depend where you're sharing it. But of course, LinkedIn seems to be the biggest driver to get people to read thought leadership at the moment. Otherwise, again, it just sits on the site. So historically, thought leadership, I think, has always been 20, 30, 40 page white papers or big dossiers on AI or Brexit, especially in the UK, or GDPR and various things. And I was speaking to a marketer the other day, and she said she was jumped on the call. She said, "Sorry, I'm late. I've just been reading through a 30,000 word document that the lawyers have produced." So, and I think that's quite a that's what thought leadership used to be. And I'm not saying we should replace that, because there's still a place for those big hero pieces. But I think if you're talking about LinkedIn, there's a lot of research, and I'll go back to the Edelman stuff. They specifically talk about thought leadership working well on LinkedIn, and you can do it in this format. If it's timely, if it's relevant, if it's current, if it's from the industry that you're in and your clients are in, obviously has to be industry specific. But they also talk about this digestible content, and they talk about the sweet spot being 250 to 500 words. So thought leadership can be delivered now in that sweet spot, 250 to 500 words, because people are busy, on LinkedIn as well. So 2 swipes of the phone and they can read it. The other thing is that it has to come from a trusted source. We all know what, especially, well, here in the UK, the trust has been eroded slightly over the last 12 months, to say the least. I think it's probably the same in a number of countries, but lawyers haven't. People want to hear from them. They are that trusted source. So thought leadership coming from them is really, really powerful as well, if that makes sense.
I suppose lawyers are considered a trusted source, I hear you say. You would think so, right?
I think they are. I think clients,
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. So it's good to know that thought leadership doesn't necessarily have to be your 50-page document, but can actually be just a short piece of text. I think that's really helpful. Let's open up, if that's okay with you, Will, and start the roundtable discussion. So